Hi, welcome back to the second part of the lecture on nation and society. I promised last time we would look at society in the US and Bangladesh. The reason for doing this is because here in chapter two, or rather three, we're looking at society and the nation, right? So, how do we understand society and what are components of society in different countries? Our job, after all, is comparative politics, right? We're interested in comparing societies in different countries to find out what it's like. So let's look at, in this video, something short and just focus on US Bangladesh, okay? So family of course matters in both countries. In the US, we spend more time with our nuclear family, okay? In Bangladesh, we're a smaller country, so people actually live in the same city most of the time. Even if they don't, they spend a lot of time with their extended families. They may travel to see them, and it's quite often for holidays and vacations to go and hang out together. But mostly you'll see that people grow up in the same cities, and so they have a lot of nuclear, or rather extended family. Financial support. It's possible in the US to have financial support from parents, sometimes grandparents. Similarly, when you grow older, you'll be supporting your children and your grandchildren. In Bangladesh, we see same kind of relationship, but also extended family. So that you might be taking care of your nieces and nephews, you might be taking care of your siblings, of your older aunts and uncles, of your, even grandchildren from other siblings. So all kinds of obligations exist. You might help them when they're getting married or when they go to school. So you might have a say in other people's educational choices, marriage decisions. So you see a lot of the extended family role. As far as religion, in the US, you have Christianity as the dominant religion. In Bangladesh, Islam is the dominant religion. Most of the people practice Islam, and the way the population is distributed is mostly Islam. And then you have Hinduism and other religions. Religious attendance. There's some similarity with the US here. In the US, you have church, so people attend on Sundays or Saturdays sometimes. You also have synagogues, you also have mosques, and many people are not very religious, and that's a big part of the society, a growing number of not religious. In Bangladesh, most people are religious. However, mosque attendance is very low, except, say, for people who meet for a congregation, such as on Fridays. Usually people pray at home. You might go to the temple on designated days. So the role of priests is also very limited. We have in Islam, basically priests officiate certain services or ceremonies, and they lead prayers. But other than that, they don't play a large role in people's lives. As far as interfaith marriage, you see more, excuse me, more interfaith marriage acceptance within the US, also interracial marriage. In Bangladesh, you won't see much interfaith marriage, but you will see many people who live outside Bangladesh, who are Bengalis, who will get married to people of different faiths, and that's more acceptable. But if you live within the country, you might feel some stigma. Your children, especially, will have a hard time finding people to marry within the country. Interracial marriage, it's allowed in Bangladesh, but it's not very normal. I mean, it's not common because we don't have much ethnic diversity. We say are mostly Bengalis, but we also have in various parts of Bangladesh, we have tribal groups, and that's the only type of ethnic diversity we have. So many of the cultural practices in Bangladesh are very traditional, and they go back to how women used to get married before. The maintenance of chastity before marriage is a big issue in Bangladesh. If you're not you know, uh, following the rules, you might get in trouble with your in-laws and others. So it's a big practice. In the US, we don't think in that way anymore. Women have gone through many feminist movements where you've had talks about what are women's rights about sexuality and everything. And so you don't hear about these things anymore in the US. Early marriage, it used to be a big issue in the US until the 20th century. So people as young as 10-year-old could get married and were, probably forced to get married by their families because families were poor. But now the legal age for marriage is 16 to 18 years. In Bangladesh, the population is still largely poor. Of course, you have lots of people living in urban areas, but there's lots of poor people in the country. And you see families are having a hard time to feed their children. So what they do is they marry them off at an early age. Now the legal age is 16 years old for the country, but you can see much younger marriage happening at a much younger age, rather. Openness to LGBT, there's somewhat openness to LGBT in the US, right? There's still a lot of resistance to gay, lesbian community, transgendered community people. But in Bangladesh, you see there's absolutely no acceptance for homosexuality. People will shun it. And but there's a large transgender population. There seems to be an openness towards transgender populations. Social connections. Well, we talked about this earlier. The similar kind of social connections in both countries, except the role of the extended family and their presence in the same cities being the cause is much higher. Nationalism. Okay, so why we study different societies and political science is to understand what kind of politics is possible, right? We want to understand the basis of nationalism, what kind of politics, political parties and ideas and all of that will work. In the US, we know that nationalism is based on liberalism, right? So we had this conversation in class. I asked students, what is it that makes you American? And people said freedom. Freedom is what makes people American in the US, right? It's our right to certain freedoms. And this is something which is the cornerstone of liberalism, right? Through the US Constitution, certain kinds of rights and freedoms were conferred upon people who lived here. And so this became a understanding of this is what we make, this is how we identify Americans. And the education system has been very important in promoting this idea and these ideas of liberalism. So the education system was set up by the founding fathers, right? And George Washington, Jefferson, Adams, what is it? John Adams, all of them were liberals. They wanted people to have these rights, but they knew no one would know about these rights unless they were educated. And so an educational system was created with the goal that people will learn to respect rights and freedoms of everybody. The right to practice your own religion without being attacked by other people, the right to freedom of speech, freedom of political assembly, the right to belong to parties, to petition, to assemble in any place. So all kinds of rights have been protected. Also right to private property, right? In Bangladesh, the educational system is less political. It's less directed at educating the people about their rights and privileges and more about conserving the culture, but also people are generally in the Indian subcontinent very communicative. So you have those liberal ideas within the culture. And we do value people's rights and freedoms. Political parties. So in the US, we see two main political parties. In Bangladesh, we may see many, many more, but there are mainly three or four. As far as linguistic and ethnic diversity in Bangladesh, majority population speaks Bangla. Some people speak English, and you have tribal languages, and we'll talk about this later. In the US, we have English as the official language. We also have Spanish, but we come from diverse backgrounds, and so people speak many languages. So I'm going to actually stop here for now, and we will come back to other stuff in another slide.